I reached out to Screen to ask if this is okay with them, and because they didn't consider Cine Europa a competition back then, they said, sure, no problem. And Cine Europa was at the beginning very small. People in the industry would mix us up with Europa Cinemas, which is a network of distributors in Europe and exhibitors. So it is not a paper. It took a little while, and a new person, our current editor, Domenico Laporta, who was really good at SEO optimization. I guess you know what this is. I'm not exactly sure, but this is what helps your website gain some visibility. And slowly Cine Europa became really very big, and I got to travel around more and more festivals as a film critic. And I started, so my first writing was in English for Screen International and then for Cine Europa. And it was only then that I started writing also for a regional website in the Balkans. This website is now gone, but this was my first time writing in my own language, which is Serbo-Croatian. And so how come that I first started writing in English? This is a sort of inherited thing. My father was a distributor and a translator. So ever since I was a little kid, I was watching films, learning English. I learned to write by sitting in my father's lap while he was typing on an old Olivetti machine, his texts or subtitles for films. So I basically first started writing in a language that is not my native tongue. And this is an unusual situation, but it is also, it also makes some sense because the way I think about cinema is in English. And in my language, a lot of filmmaking terms come from French, mostly from French. So for editing, we say montage, for instance. And or some come from German. So trailer we call Vorspann, which is the German word for that. So and there are still no really proper words in our language for every, I mean, like our words that would be Serbian or Serbo-Croatian, and terminology differs. So something that would be called line producer in English, which is kind of the main person on the set, who takes care of everything practical. In our language is called director of the film, but he is not the film director. So it's fun to play with these semantics, and it's also a reason that I really like this job so much. But the biggest reason I like it so much is that I get to travel and to meet people in different countries who have similar interests and to exchange experiences. And this is also why I'm happy to be here. This is my first time in East Asia, and the first time I'm this far east. So I am really happy to be here, and I'm happy to be doing workshop with local participants here, and I'm sure that I will also learn from them. Now let's talk a bit about various forms of writing about cinema. So it's not, I already mentioned that besides film criticism, there are, of course, like in any other field, there are news, there are interviews, there are essays, there are industry analysis, there are reports from festivals. Nowadays, I think only very few very respected film critics can make a living only from writing film criticism. all of us others have to write all these other forms as well. I mean, it's not that we have to. If we have some other income, then great. You can only write film criticism, and it is the most beautiful form. But also through these other formats, you learn about different aspects of a film. And so it took a long while for me, even when I started writing reviews, to understand which segment of filmmaking fits with which other segment of filmmaking. Because actually I didn't know many things until I tried to make a film myself. And I think every film critic should try to make a film. This will make you much more objective. You will understand how difficult this is and how many challenges there are. And also this has made me, you know, when you're young, when you're in your 20s, you feel like you know everything. And and you don't. And it's so it changes. When I was first starting, I was much stricter in my reviews. But then I made 2 short films as a producer. I didn't direct them, but because I had contacts in the industry, I was able to help my friends get equipment for free, and also like a discount on the editing room and so on. And I was there in the editing, and I was there at the shooting, and these were like short documentaries, very low level, not exactly student films, but a bit above that. And when I realized how difficult even this is, this made me much more considerate when I'm reviewing films. So, for instance, I never write a negative review of a first film by a filmmaker from a small country, because they have little chance to break out anyway, and a negative review in a like internationally renowned outlet could bury their career, and it does not necessarily have to be their fault. Film is a team effort, so there are production circumstances. So it's not only about what the screenwriter wrote, how the director set the scenes, or how good the actors are. There are many unforeseeable circumstances, especially in smaller, poorer industries. So I would count here both the industry of my country, Serbia, and the industry of your country, Nepal. These are small industries where there is not a lot of money for cinema, for film production. And yes, so I think rather than just evaluation of a single film, and I believe that film criticism can do a lot more. It is important to have the context in mind. So I'm not going to watch a first film by a Nepali filmmaker in the same way that I'm watching a film by Christopher Nolan. And I'm not evaluating it on the same terms. There are objective measures, that is criteria, but it is important to have the context in mind. So what is the aim of the film? How high is the filmmaker aiming? And this is very different between Christopher Nolan and a first-time filmmaker from a small country. So I think this there should be an element of understanding and compassion in film criticism. Otherwise, I think it speaks more about the critic than about the film. Another great way, I think, to write about cinema is the essayistic form. So this is the case when you write about more than one film, and these films are connected by the context. So, for instance, they are shown in the same festival, and they address similar topics, or they have similarities in style, or they are connected in some other way, and this is challenging but also very beautiful form of writing that I don't get to write as often as I would like, but when I do, it is usually about documentary films, which are maybe my favorite form in the last 10 years or so. Somehow I went into that field because also documentaries in the last 10 years started becoming much more mainstream. Driven, of course, by the big streaming services and investigative true crime documentaries like you have on Netflix and so on. But this also brought up an awareness in the film industry, but also among the general public and in the society, that these are really movies. These are not just safaris on Discovery Channel. So here's a nice anecdote. I was at the documentary festival in Lisbon in Portugal, and the taxi driver asked me, why are you here? And I told him a documentary festival. He said, oh, documentary festival. It's hard to make a documentary. You have to lay down there in the bush and wait for that lion to move. So there are, of course, still misconceptions about different genre and forms, but not everybody is a cinephile. People sometimes, I think regular audiences, they will maybe go to cinema once or twice a month. Depends, of course, on the culture, on the city, on the country. And but it is because documentaries often deal with socially and politically important topics in a way that fiction cinema doesn't. I think this is maybe what brought me closer to documentaries. And it's also that it is also, there is a very strong personal connection for me with documentaries, and also the reason why I'm living in Croatia and not in Serbia. So 9 years ago, a friend of mine from Croatia, who is a documentary producer and distributor, one of the best in my region, he hired a new colleague and brought her to this festival in Macedonia, and this is where I met her, and she's my wife. So this is why I live in Croatia. And this is also one of the beautiful parts of this job, is that you meet really interesting people. You don't have to marry them, but it doesn't hurt. And so in a way, she was much less experienced than me, but she was really into documentaries. And as I moved to Zagreb to live with her, I also started working for Zagreb Docs, which is the biggest documentary festival in Croatia. And then later, I started also working for what is the world's biggest documentary festival. It's IDFA in Amsterdam. And my wife too, she lives in Amsterdam now, and I'm still in Zagreb, so I have to chase her again. But I'm waiting for Croatian papers, so this is why I'm still in Croatia. Anyway, besides the very exciting for me documentary field, since I started this training program for film critics in 2018, and it is called Go Critic, I have been doing workshops at animation festivals. So this is partly result of European funding structures. So I'll go a bit back now in time to 2008, when I did my first workshop for young critics, and I was at that point a critic myself only for 2 years. So I was really a beginner. But my friends at the Festival of Mediterranean Cinema in Split on Croatian coast, They asked if I would like to do a workshop with film critics together with another colleague who is more experienced. And I said, sure, if Natasha, the more experienced colleague, is there, then I feel safe to do it. And then we did this with, I think, 10 young people, most of them students. And I realized I really enjoy giving knowledge. And this is something that reminds me why this job is so interesting and beautiful, because when I get, especially now in 2023, when things have changed so much with internet and social media and so on, if someone who is 20-year-old, so they were born in this century and they want to be a film critic, this really warms my heart and it gives me hope for the future. Because I think although internet has brought a much bigger proliferation and much more room for writing about cinema, it has also brought, in a certain way, it has also limited the right voices to come out. So this is, I guess, because of algorithms, but it's also because of social media and like these culture divisions. So you must have seen in the last 10 years how some films are just attacked, for instance, by right-wing people for having a black person playing someone who was in the original story white. Or from the other side, the so-called woke angle attacks a film in which a person who is not disabled plays a disabled person. So these are all very interesting issues to talk about, but they are not really talked about. They're only fought about, shouted about. And this is what I think is a very important role of film criticism, to find nuance, to find reflection, to understand differences between quality of the film and its message and the way this message is conveyed, and differences and similarities, and how all of this goes together. Another big problem that internet brought is the speed of how quickly I have to write a review. So when I was starting out, it was not, first of all, 2001, all of these magazines were still only in print. They started making websites. It took about 5-6 years for those websites to really function and that people get used to that they are moving from printed material to online. And this has also driven the need, well, let's call it the need for speed. There is a big festival, so those Class A festivals like Berlin, Cannes, Venice, what else is there? Karlovy Vary, and other big festivals like ITFA or Sundance. Now it used to be that like in mid-2000s, if I would go to a festival and write a report and maybe some reviews, it would be okay to wait for a couple of days that this review is published. Then 10 years later, it's like there is a press screening in the morning of this film, which premieres in the evening. My editor wants the review to be ready to publish when the premiere starts. So this means in the morning I go to the press screening, and right after the film is finished, I go and write the story. And with after COVID, when many festivals went online, this became even worse, because then screeners are available. So I don't even have to go to the festival. I have the screener, I connect my computer to my big TV, and I watch the film there, and then I disconnect the computer, and in the same room, on the same computer, I write the review. So where is the room for reflection, for thinking, for really, if these are, supposedly these are the greatest films we have, those, I mean globally, those that premiere at big festivals like Berlin or Cannes and so on. So they should deserve more room for reflection, more thinking about it. I find it a luxury, if it's possible, that I see the film today and the review is due tomorrow. So this is already a luxury. And these are kind of pros and cons of the current media landscape when it comes to film criticism, which also leads us to critics aggregators like Rotten Tomatoes or Metacritic, which I'm pretty sure you're aware of. I find even myself, so there's a new film out and I want to decide if I want to see it. Well, I go to Rotten Tomatoes and I look at those percentages. And if it's a high percentage from the critics and low from the audiences, I will most probably want to see this film. But this doesn't tell, or if it's high percentage of both, even better. But this is far from telling the whole story of a film and its perception by the critics. So if you see 98% on Rotten Tomatoes, this doesn't mean this is one of the best films ever. It is how Rotten Tomatoes calculates these percentages. So very few films are completely good or completely bad. And a review will sometimes have stars or grades, like 5 stars, 4 stars, or not. But this is how Rotten Tomato counts it. So let's say that there are 10 reviews, and these 10 critics agree that this is not a bad film. So let's say they give it a like. So this is what Rotten Tomatoes counts as a positive review, and you get 98%. But it can very well be just an average film that is made with a good enough quality of filmmaking that the critic can't say this is a bad film. So it's a thumbs up and it's a plus on Rotten Tomatoes. So that is quite misleading. But on the other hand, it also means that film criticism still means something. If there is a website that collects all these reviews and kind of makes some sort of average, Metacritic works differently. I'm not sure how. I was more interested in Rotten Tomatoes because I'm also a Rotten Tomatoes approved critic. And Rotten Tomatoes is also very American and Anglo-centric. They do have some reviews in Spanish, but that's about it. So this is, I think, if you only have critics who watch a film from a certain cultural context, then it is quite likely that they will have a similar view of it. So what this misses is kind of plurality of voices. And even though we think that internet has democratized things and everybody can have an opinion, it is also not. You're not going to ask your friend on Facebook how to get cured. You're going to go to a doctor. So luckily, film criticism is not going to kill anybody, unless it's a very depressed filmmaker who gets a very bad review. This is a much larger societal problem that film criticism is only one small victim of. So I wouldn't go too wide into this, because this is the situation that exists. It is not something that I think we can change. but we can change how we understand it. And this is why these workshops that I'm doing are important, I believe. And it's even if my students don't end up being professional film critics, they will have learned how to evaluate the film, how to watch it, and how to express what they feel about it. And this already gives more nuance than just likes, dislikes, quick reviews on Twitter or Facebook posts and so on. There's now, at the moment, there's a bit of a war on Facebook about the film The Zone of Interest. I don't know if you've heard of this film. It's nominated for 5 Oscars. So the film was only in cinemas until like a couple of days ago. And then it appeared on one of the streaming platforms, I'm not sure which. And then even people who don't use these platforms, people download torrents. And so now, after many great, very positive opinions on this film from people who saw it in the cinema, now there's a backlash from people who saw it at home. And so I can't really tell if the reason is the format of the viewing, because I saw it in the cinema. And now if I see it at home, I still have the impression from the cinema. So maybe this film doesn't work at home. And it's an interesting situation. Ideally, a film should work even on the phone, but please don't watch films on the phone if you don't necessarily have to. It's okay on a flight, I guess, or in a bus or something like that. But yeah, it's simply not what a film is made for. Film is made, most usually, is made for a cinema screen. And this is at least how I believe 99% of filmmakers want their films to be seen. And so I do salute the push that cinematic experience got from very famous filmmakers like Christopher Nolan, who I already mentioned, Spielberg, Scorsese, who are really always hitting down on this point that films should be seen in a cinema. And it's not only about the format, it's also about the communal experience. You are with a group of people in a dark room, so there is a vibe, there is an atmosphere that appears. And this is especially important for like sort of films that become what they call cult films. So this could be comedies, horror films. This is really audience's reaction, and you are part of the audience, and enhances your experience of the film. And this cannot be replicated at home. I mean, yeah, you can bring 10 of your friends and get drunk and watch a comedy, but that's not it's just not the same thing. Okay, let me consult my notes to see where I go next. Okay, yes, I have this. How to watch a film. Normal viewer, or I mean regular cinema goer, or even a cinephile, a person who watches a lot of films, they enter the film as an experience. They take the whole thing in as one thing. And this is how it's meant to be watched. But if you are writing a review of this film, then there are elements that you need to pay attention to. So what you will most usually get, at least in traditional narrative cinema, whether it's fiction or documentary or animation, you will most usually get connected to the story and the characters. But if you are writing a review, you need to be aware of all the filmmaking elements. So it's not just acting and directing and screenplay, it's also the lighting, the settings, the costumes, the music. So there you have to build an awareness of how to follow all these elements. And it's not always easy. Sometimes I forget if a film had music at all. So this can mean two things. Film didn't have music, or the music was really very good. Because music in cinema is a functional thing. And of course, we all know famous themes like from Godfather or from Blade Runner, and those compositions that really shape the film in a certain way. But it is when music is not so conspicuous, but it works somewhere in the background together with the sound design. Sound design is incredibly important. These are all the elements that you not necessarily have to analyze every one of them, but when you're watching the film, try to notice all of them, and then after you experience the film, excuse me, then you can go back and see how these elements influenced your perception, your experience, how you felt after seeing the film, and if you think it's good or bad. And then this is how you write the film review. Okay, this film, as I said before, very few films are just good or just bad. So it's always nuanced. So you may say that a certain film works up to an extent, but then is undermined by an element that didn't work. For instance, wooden dialogue, or a bad actor, or or anything that doesn't fit the atmosphere that the film should have. So, I think the way to, so why I do workshops as opposed to lectures, I don't mind doing this, I like talking, as you can tell. But the thing is that this is what I'm looking forward to doing with 8 participants, is that there has to be a specific example of a film and writing for me to point out the problems in writing, and also to tell this aspiring critic what they should learn more about. So another good thing on the internet is that you can learn a lot about filmmaking on the internet. You don't have to go to the film school. At least for purposes of a film critic, there are many sources online that can help you learn the basis of filmmaking. So camera angles, this is very easy to find online, and like YouTube has many very simple videos, and they will tell you what does a certain camera angle do. And then you can apply this knowledge to the particular film. So there is the famous Dutch angle, which is actually a misnomer. This is a German angle. Instead of Deutsch, Americans called it Dutch. That's Americans. So and it has some German expressionism. So these are those films by, for instance, Murnau or other filmmakers of this period, like The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari or Nosferatu and so on. So these are all these skewed angles. That angle is the one that shows the character either from some unusual skewed angle, which then immerses you in the character's state of mind. And then you can, this was silent cinema, but now we have sound design and music that do a lot in this respect. Also lighting, color grading, so after the film is shot, there is a whole process of deciding what tone it's going to have. This is something that you will also notice in a film if you know it's something that you should be looking for. So some film just feels yellow. There are films that are blue. And this is a conscious decision of the artist. why did they want to make it this color or that color? Then this fits together with other elements of the film, like the aforementioned camera angles or acting performances or the sets. It is, someone said, I don't know who, but it is easier to get a film if you just listen to it. So you close your eyes and you listen to the film. You will get more of the meaning of the film than if you just watch it and you don't have sound. And this seems counterintuitive for a visual art, but experiment, try this, and you will see it's true. It's just all those elements that that work together to create the film the way it is, and then it's from there we go to the film's point or message. Not every film needs to have a message, and not every filmmaker goes out to tell you something, to like give you their opinion on something. Filmmakers are poets and storytellers, and I think what drives them is the need to create rather than to write some big injustice or point out the plight of a certain part of the community or something like that. Sometimes they do, especially in documentaries, but for this not to be just a pamphlet, an ideological statement, it has to go through the filmmaking process. And is this something that you should be looking for when you are writing the review? I think it is dangerous to put words in someone's mouth, if you know what I mean. So you can, there is, I don't know, 40 of you here, 50 maybe, I don't know. There could be 50 interpretations of the same film from each of you. And then it's like, think about what is the chance that your opinion is more valid than the opinion of the person sitting next to you. So sometimes a film will have a very clear message that is unmistakable. But most often, and this is the case with, for me, the most artistically successful films, it is much more ambiguous. So one thing can mean more than one thing. A certain sentence that the character speaks can be interpreted in one way or another. The character arc of a character can be seen as a positive or a negative depending on the viewer. There was a very, very interesting film last summer, a Bulgarian film, Blaga's Lessons. I don't know if you might have it at the festival here. It should be shown. I think everybody should see this film. So you are, I suppose, all aware of the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell's theory of how there is this circle, and so the character starts from somewhere and ends somewhere. And usually in cinema, the character will, by the end of the film, through the experiences they go through, become a better person. In this film, it's the other way around. And it's this, but it is very well represented how it is the society which is corrupt and negligent of like regular people forces a 70-year-old retired school teacher to become a thief. And it's a very interesting example of what I would call a reverse character development. And just one small example to show you how the director's decisions can be perceived in different ways. And you could judge this character, or you could understand her. And this will depend on you and your experiences, and also your society. And it is, so now we arrive at the cultural specificities of cinema and film criticism. So, for instance, now at the Berlinale, where I came from, and the awards are tonight, for the first time ever in competition is a Nepali film, Shabala, and I hope it wins something. I haven't seen it. I didn't have the chance to get a ticket. So how will a European critic or an American critic evaluate a Nepali film? What are the cultural specificities? How much can you research and find out if you are a European critic and this film is so? I didn't see this film, but I saw a film from Senegal, also a very foreign culture to me. And there were things in it that I didn't understand. And then there is a press kit. So a film will have a press kit which will contain information about the film, also usually interview with the director, and a synopsis, long synopsis, like describing what's happening inside. So reading this interview with the director, I understood that those things that I saw and I didn't get, they were some ancient rituals in this community in north of Senegal. So, okay, I am a journalist, I have this press kit, but normal audience will not have a press kit when they go to see this film. If this film ever comes to a local cinema, because a small art house film from Senegal, even if it is co-produced by, I think, France and Germany, will not reach many cinemas, not even in like very developed European markets that have a room for art house cinema as opposed to just multiplexes that show Hollywood films. And there are no cinemas in Senegal. So who is going to watch this film and how are they going to perceive it? The press kit says they will organize screenings. There is a thing called mobile cinema. Maybe you have this in Nepal too, when people take film, a projector and a screen and take it to towns or villages that don't have a cinema, and they set up a screen. This is an alternative model of distribution that's been pretty popular in my region, for instance, in the Balkans, which is also a region with very few cinemas. And then if people don't have the chance to come to your film, then you take your film to them. This is the idea. And so to come back to this Senegalese film, in my review, I kind of combined what I learned from the press kit with the awareness that without the press kit, I wouldn't know what happened there. So instead of describing the meaning of this ritual, I just mentioned in the review that that the film includes ancient Senegalese rituals that will be mysterious to most audiences. And this is also a way to say that this may be a challenging film. So maybe it's not for the regular cinema goer. Maybe it's for the adventurous cinephile. And I mean, not maybe, this film is definitely for the adventurous cinephile. And so how much research can you do and should you do? This brings you into danger of what I would call Wikipedization of film criticism. So you learn a lot of facts about, let's say, a film deals with war in, I don't know, let's say there's a revolution in Venezuela. There is a revolution every couple of years. So a film is then put in this, a film is situated in this context. So you go and you research all about this revolution, all about these conflicts, all about parties who are in this story, and you end up actually with describing this situation rather than the film. So there is some point where you kind of have to stop and really wonder, because who are you writing this review for? Know your readers. This is very important. So it's a different review that you write for a regular daily paper. There's a new film coming out. Usually it's a Hollywood film. Let's say Oppenheimer is coming out. And so you're writing a review for the most general audience. This, used to be daily papers. Now I guess it will be any general website that has news, but also stories about culture and sports and so on. So it's a different kind of review you will write for this audience than a review you will write for a professional audience. In this basic kind of review, which is in a daily paper, which is what I teach my students, this is what we take as the aim. So your audience is general moviegoers. The purpose of such a review is to describe the film in a way that the reader can understand if this is something they want to see or not. This is, let's say, the goal of such a review. But then, if you have a chance, if you have room in an outlet that is dedicated to cinema, then this is usually read by cinephiles. Then you can delve more into artistic aspects of the film and also your own interpretation and opinion. I think it's also this first kind of review that I mentioned, the most general one, should also include your opinion. So the reader wants to know if you think the film is good or not. You can describe it well, but it is in the tone. I think tone is maybe the most effective way to send your opinion to the reader without just explicitly and bluntly saying this is a good film or this is a bad film. So, and this is something you develop with experience, with reading, writing, watching. And so then, there are also what I mentioned at the beginning of the talk. There are these professional reviews where like the angle of, let's say, message of the film is not really that important. It is aimed at telling this film will make a lot of money, sell a lot of admissions or not, and then it will explain why. And this is then related to, of course, film with famous actors or films by a big name director will most probably have a lot of viewers. But there is a thing called word of mouth. So if the film turns out to be bad, its attendance will go down in the second or in the third weekend. So here we are really talking about distribution and box office. So these are, we can watch a film as a work of art, but every work of art exists in a context. It's not in a vacuum. So it's not, it is important when this film came out and how does the story it tells relate to the immediate experience of the moviegoer, their own life, their community, their values. And furthermore, you can go even deeper if you have room and the right outlet and the right skills. And you can cover all these aspects together. They can be combined. I can explain why this Senegalese film that I mentioned will not have many viewers, what is its best chance to get more viewers, what it means, what it consists of, who is it for, etc. So there are many things film review can do. And now we arrive at the point of view of the critic. So there are, let's say, in European criticism and in American criticism, there is a difference. So I can't tell about Asian film criticism or South American film criticism because I read very little of it. And usually then there would be writers who, I do sometimes read Asian Movie Pulse. You know this website? Okay, that's a website dedicated to Asian cinema, and people from all over the world write for it, not only Asian people. There are different traditions of film criticism between Europe and the United States. So some of the first great film critics were actually authors, writers. Graham Greene is one of them. He in the 30s, he was probably the best film critic in the world. And there is a certain literary style that film criticism came out of. And then in France, you had the famous New Wave, which are filmmakers who were initially film critics. So there is a sort of chain here. And I think the main difference between European and American film criticism is stylistic, but of course there are many different critics in Europe and the United States, so you can't really pigeonhole everything saying like, this is European criticism, this is American criticism. Every critic is an individual, but for instance, in European film criticism, you will rarely or never, except maybe on Letterboxd, but this is not a professional outlet, you will never find the writer expressing themselves in first person with I think, I see, I like, I dislike. Americans do this a lot. And I think even though it seems like a minor difference, there is a key thing here. And this is about, okay, who cares what you think? Who is the I who is writing? So more interesting and more relevant is knowing how to use your personal preferences and your taste in a way to explain the reader if this is something they would want to see. So for instance, I like horror movies. Besides documentaries, horror is my favorite thing. But I will not write about a horror movie, this is a film for me. This is a film for horror fans. So you will place yourself as a critic in a certain context. So if there is I don't know, a new Japanese film out and it calls back to Ozu or Mizoguchi, it will then be conceivable that the regular moviegoer who doesn't know that much about Japanese cinema will maybe not get some things. And there is a way to express this without using the first person. So I, as an expert on Japanese cinema, I'm just giving you an example, like this film because it reminds me of, I don't know, Tokyo Story by Ozu. But this will mean nothing to the regular reader. So if you want to be read, and if you are a critic who wants to keep their job, I think this is something you should be careful about. It's not. Maybe it's not a bad place to talk about opportunities to get a job as a film critic. So with these workshops that I do, I get applications from young people, usually between 20 and mid-30s, but it's usually those younger ones who are interested in cinema, and they know they want to do something, but they're not sure what. And they will apply to a screenwriting workshop, they will apply to a critics workshop and so on, and try to find their place in this field that they are passionate about. And so I often get students who are very talented, have a really developed taste, they have a knowledge of cinema, but are simply not people who express themselves verbally well and who don't write well. But they have, for instance, great talent for visuals. And then I tell them you should be making films, not writing about films. And, but there are also many other jobs in between making films and writing about films. So there are distribution companies, cinemas, film festivals. There are many creative positions in all of this. So my first job was actually in the marketing department of a distribution company in Serbia. And I realized I hated doing this because there was no room for creativity. We were distributing Hollywood majors, and they just give you everything and you basically translate it. There is no room to be creative, to find your own way how to attract audience for this film that you are distributing. But this can be really creative in art house cinema. Art house is that, when seen from the American angle, refers to anything that's not a Hollywood film. So any European film for them is art house. If it has subtitles, it's art house. So, but in a more specific sense, when we say art house, these would be films that you might see at EU Nepal Film Festival rather than in your multiplex. And of course, there's not only Hollywood that's commercial. Every country has its film industry that makes films for its own audience. These films will usually not travel, but they will maybe have a lot of viewers at home. I would like to learn more from my participants about how this works in Nepal. But for instance, there are film industries that do both things very well. So I would, besides obviously France, which is the biggest and strongest film industry in Europe, and is also very important for world cinema, because there is funding for films coming from Africa or Asia, or what is termed Global South. I suppose you're acquainted with this really very wide and undefined term. Besides those industries, like for instance Polish or Turkish, they have both things. They have like 20, 30 comedies a year that bring in millions of viewers, but they also have like 5 films every year which are very artistic and they win awards in film festivals. This is to me sort of an indicator of the health of the film industry. And I think both things have to exist. You cannot have only art house because it doesn't bring in any money, and then there is no industry. So I think commercial cinema is necessary for artistic cinema to exist. And they are not mutually exclusive. There are films that are both audience friendly, crowd pleasers, and artistically accomplished. This is rare, but when it happens, it's the best thing. Okay, let me see. What else? Oh, I'm already talking for 90 minutes. Great. Okay. Yeah, there is one important thing that sort of fell out earlier during the talk, when I was talking about the tone of the critic. There is also the tone of the film, how the film presents itself. And within this context, there can be a discrepancy between the filmmaker's intention and the realization. So you can sometimes tell that the filmmaker tried to achieve something, but it didn't really work out. But it is dangerous to say this in a review because you can never be in the head of the filmmaker. But with experience, you can notice how where the filmmaker wanted to go. And it's only a matter of style and expression, not to say, this director wanted to do this, but it didn't work out. These are nuances, and this is what we will be doing at the workshop, how to express this in the right way. But it is also important to, when we talk about tone and the film's intentions or the filmmaker's intentions, it is the whole context. So it's important not to ask the film to be something it's not. So it can be, you may wish this film to end in a different way than it did, or you may want it to have more close-ups or slower editing, but that is not the film, not what the film is. So the film should be evaluated on its own terms. You don't expect from a student filmmaker to make a film like Spielberg. So this is always try to keep this in your mind and be aware of it. And it is what I said at the beginning. So you evaluate different films depending on the context and on your knowledge about the context of the film, how it was made, by whom, when, in which culture or industry. And so the more you know about, not only you can read a lot about film theory, but sometimes it is more, local context is sometimes more important. And then there are like, I saw last year in Berlin, there was a film called Samsara. And it is a Spanish film, a Spanish filmmaker, but it was made in Laos. And the film is really about samsara. So, and it is not clear if this is documentary or fiction, but it is very culturally specific, but it still works as a universal piece of art. So I will briefly describe the film. It consists of 3 parts. First part is an old woman dying, and this young man comes every day to read to her about the life of Buddha. And she says, I know that I will come back as a chicken. And then she dies, and then it says, there is a narrative title on the screen, which says, close your eyes and open them only after the music is over. So you close your eyes, and there is about 15-20 minutes until the music is over. And so there is something happening, and there is light in, of course your eyes still perceive the light, especially if you see it in the cinema, but I also saw it at home on the laptop and it works. So, so this is this travel, this journey that the old woman makes, and then the music ends, you open your eyes, and you see a little girl with a chicken. So, because the film is so well made, you don't have to have knowledge of samsara and Buddhism to have a great viewing experience, because it's well made. But this knowledge will expand your perception and enjoyment of this film. So, so this is just one example that I thought would work well here. But yeah, there are millions of others, and there are like, I don't know, Serbian films with customs that would be completely foreign for you, and you wouldn't really understand them. But if Kusturica made this film, you will probably enjoy it, because he knows how to make a good film, or at least he used to 15 years ago. So yeah. These are some of the things to pay attention to. And yeah, I would now, because I don't know what I will speak about next, I would invite you, if you have any questions. I can still come back to tell you more about my workshop, about how we do with animation, but I'm happy to answer any questions. They need necessarily to go together or to be mutually exclusive, but I think that there is a perception of political correctness that is negative, and there is a perception of political correctness that is positive. So I assume you are referring to the negative perception. And I think artists are this is maybe a better question for an artist, but I will tell you what I think. I think an artist goes out to make a work of art because they have a feeling to express themselves. How they will express themselves and how this will change will also depend on their cultural context, which then includes the issue of political correctness. And I don't think it's necessary to hurt anyone's feelings in order to make a quality film, but I also don't think that people should be offended by every little thing they think is a problem. So I think it's a spectrum. It's not a binary thing, it is true that political correctness, when it is over amplified, can influence a filmmaker to remove some sentence, to change some character, to change something in the plot, but I don't think political correctness is ruining art. It's let's say, again, individual, and I think that for instance, I really, myself, I like to joke in a politically incorrect manner. But I understand that this can hurt some people. So I don't necessarily do it with people I don't know. People who know me will understand it in the right way. But there is, I think, a work of art can have a humanistic message, whether it's politically correct or incorrect. But then it is where the media play the part. It is what the echo of this will be in the society, and this comes from the media. And this again brings me back to how important nuances in film criticism and in general in reporting about cinema. So I think that political correctness can hurt the society, but I think also political incorrectness can also cause damage. So, not necessarily every filmmaker is a great human being, and nor they have to be. So when I see, when people are, here's maybe an opinion that may be popular or unpopular, is like, okay, this filmmaker has been discovered to has, I don't know, stolen some money or raped somebody or killed somebody or was an asshole on the set or something like that. And then they are like, okay, talent agency drops him, his new or her new project is cancelled, and nobody wants to have anything to do with that. And my counter question is to ask, okay, so you have friends. You are friends with someone because you like them as a person. Do you expect them to make a great work of art? So this is my angle on that. It's times watching a documentary film, you expect, so they tell you, you are now watching a documentary film. And what your mind goes to, okay, this is reality. This is the truth. because it's not documentary. It's not something that comes from someone's mind. But there is a thing they call staged performance, where a director will instruct the protagonists of the documentary, who are real people, they're not actors, to do something for the camera. So this is not something they would necessarily do at this point, but if it is true to their character, if it is something they would otherwise conceivably do, then it represents this sort of ecstatic truth. And so how do you judge authenticity? This also depends on your own perception and your own experience. So how would I know that some custom I see in a Nepali film is authentic if I don't know Nepali customs? Or how would you know that something that happens in a Serbian film is authentic if you don't know our customs? So I think film can transcend these things and tell the truth in a way that doesn't necessarily have to relate to facts, because facts are a journalistic thing, a historical thing, a political thing, and a film is art. And then there is this transcendental quality that it can bring to a certain topic, and then it can be true even if it stages something that is not real. If you understand what I mean.
Yeah, just like my supplementary question would be, just before you were talking about some kind of genre that was a blur between fiction and non-fiction. As a film critic, if you have to distinguish between this, let's say some kind of genre, just like fictional documentary, then what kind of operational tools basically you will apply to analyze that, or say, okay, this particular thing is a fictional documentary?
Yeah, this is really on a film-to-film basis. I can't tell, like, so you do develop, like, when you watch films professionally a lot, you develop sort of a sense. And something feels right or not, and you might be wrong. This is why I say there is no objective review. So, yeah, there is no single answer to your question. It's really case-to-case basis.
Well, thank you.
So you have been talking about your own perspective. It's objective, right? It should be objective at times. So how do you define the proportion of the objectivity and subjectivity while writing film criticism?
Great question.
Thank you.
And impossible to answer. So I get it. No. I don't think there is a film review can be objective, and I don't think any work of art is just objectively good or bad. So there are elements. We can say this script is well written, or this DOP is has really good camera work, or this is an excellent actor, but this all together still doesn't mean that the film will be good. So there are elements that point towards it, but I feel that film is more like poetry. So film language is something that is that can be transcendental, and this is where, for me, the meaning and quality lies. And it can be really also a film made by an amateur filmmaker with no budget, but if they are talented, they can make it can make for a great viewing experience. So, of course, we are all from the angle of film criticism. We bring our knowledge, experience, cultural conditioning, living situation, mood which we were in when we were watching the film. We bring all that into the review. I will experience the film differently in 3 different days after 3 different events that happened. So I don't think there is such a thing as objective film review, but this is also, I think, a great thing about plurality of voices. So one film can have 6 completely different reviews, and maybe that's the most exciting film. At least I would expect it to be. If I see a new film is out and the reviews are really divided, this is the film that I'm most interested in. So everybody brings themselves, like the filmmakers brings themselves into the film, so does the film critic bring themselves into the review.
And they'll say, you know how much hardships I went through to make this movie and to put it out there, and you're being so nasty about it, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, see, I get the same. Not for Nepali film makers, because I don't think I ever reviewed the Nepali film, but from Serbian filmmakers, Croatian filmmakers, I get threats, messages, and this is, I think, part of. So I don't think this is so culturally specific for Nepal. For instance, in the Balkans, the culture is quite same, except we are louder. But it's also like respect authority, be nice to older people, and so on. And this is actually, I think, quite universal. How honest can you be? Well, this is an individual thing. So it depends really on film to film basis. And I try not to be mean. This is where I stop. Not be mean. So it's like you can describe film in a negative way, point out its problems, but you know, like you can do it in a polite way. This is what I try to do. I sometimes, when I write a negative review, I go through it several times, if I have the time, to fine-tune the tone. I don't want to insult the filmmaker. That's where I stop. So yeah, be honest that the film is not good, but don't be mean. This is how I see it.
Thank you.
Visibility, and that it can. Some people believe that it can help feminism and like further it and really bring it to many young girls who are maybe not aware of that. Now I can't tell, I cannot really judge. To me, I think it's counterproductive for feminism and women's rights. I think it's only productive for selling dolls and for Mattel to now make films about every puppet, doll, whatever action figure they make. But yeah, I may be wrong, and I may think my values are feminist, but I am a man, so maybe I'm wrong.
Hello, Mr. Glad. Nice to meet you. I'm Ashish. I'm an acting student. My latest work has been selected in World Film Festival Cannes. On the Bata, the final conversations. My question to you is, Doctor Strange, the movie which was shot in Nepal, and in the Marvel Universe, Thor, the Norse history. So they are showing multiverse in their movies, and they're showing different parts of history or pages written in the universe. So how is Europe taking all these kinds of things normally, or they're taking these prophecies just casually? I would like to know about that.
So I'm not exactly sure I am understood. You mentioned multiverse.
Yeah, they're showing multiverse like it's in a Vedic context. They're showing a multiverse exists, and the few thousand years ago in the Vedic culture, they have already created some Vedic texts, like they're showing multiverse, and they're showing multiverse in these movies. So Europe, you're a critic from Europe, right?
Yes.
So is Europe taking it lightly, naturally, or fictionist way?
Oh, well, you know, it's so I think it was Aristotle who said no one ever invented anything new. And I think that, yeah, of course, multiverse idea is much older than Marvel. And I think this is about general education. This is It's about, when Matrix came out, people thought people's minds were blown. People were like, this is a completely new understanding of the universe. And we've had that it was in Europe, I think, Descartes who formulated this idea. So it's, it is, I think it can also be a function of film critic to educate in this sense. And it's,